Accordingly, I have directed the Secretary of the Treasury to take the action necessary to defend the dollar against the speculators. I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets, except in amounts and conditions determined to be in the interest of monetary stability and in the best interest of the United States. Now, what is this action, which is very technical, what does it mean for you?
One of the first phases in this transformation was the transition from industrial to financial power. This started in the early 1970s with the Nixon gold shock. In 1971, President Nixon abandoned the US dollar's last remaining convertibility to gold, creating the world's first fiat global reserve currency. This process is of huge importance, but in essence, once a currency becomes detached from the real economy, the return offered by investment in the productive economy falls. In short, it becomes much more profitable to print money, inflate asset prices and gamble on them, than wait for productive investment to return a profit.
But our primary concern is with the American workers and with fair competition around the world.
It's not simply a conflict between two industrial rivals competing for a market. It's between two different economic systems. It's between the logic of an industrial economy and the logic of a financial economy, finance capitalism. The United States is deindustrializing, and it's also financializing. Now, that makes the kind of capitalism that we have in the United States very different from the capitalism in Marx's day and from the capitalism in America's 19th century when it really took off. The Adam Smith, John Stuart Mill, Ricardo, they were talking about the economics of industrial capitalism and how to industrialize the country and get richer. Today's economy says how 1% can get richer by deindustrializing and making the economy poorer. So the question is, who are you going to believe, the textbooks or economic history?
This process of transition from a productive, industrial-based economy to a highly speculative, finance-based economy caused the center of power to shift from an industrial elite to a highly concentrated financial elite. This was not a transfer from one class to another, it was a transfer within one class to a very small group within that class.
At Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, delegates from 44 allied and associate countries arrived for the opening of the United Nations Monetary and Financial Conference. Invited by President Roosevelt to the first major world financial meeting since the London Conference of 1933, they will work in the seclusion of this White Mountains resort.
The second and less obvious consequence of the gold shock was that prior to 1971, exchange rates between countries had been pegged to set values. These exchange rates were maintained by, among other things, capital controls. In other words, countries had to control the amount of money that moved in and out of their economies to maintain their peg to the dollar.
Opening day, in his role of acting conference president, he addresses the meeting. To be discussed are plans for the stabilization of world currencies. All agreements must be ratified by the governing bodies of the nations involved before becoming effective.
Once this system, called the Bretton Woods system, was abandoned and exchange rates were allowed to float, there was no longer any need to control capital flows. This opened the door to a truly transnational financial world, unimpeded by borders, and a kleptocratic race to accumulate everything started.
There are no nations, there are no peoples, there are no Russians, there are no Arabs, there are no third worlds, there is no West. There is only one holistic system of systems, one vast and immane, interwoven, interacting, multivariate, multinational dominion of dollars.
This revolution rendered vast swathes of the workforce surplus to requirement, as they were no longer needed to fill high-skill, high-wage industrial jobs in the productive economy. Instead, those jobs were replaced by low-wage, low-skill jobs servicing those in the newly empowered financial elite and the political class that served them.
Petrodollars, electrodollars, multi-dollars, Reichmarks, rands, rubles, pounds, and shekels. Am I getting through to you, Mr. B?